The chapel sat quiet under a sky stitched with stars, its wooden frame creaking like it remembered better days. Dust floated through the candlelight like tiny spirits, and the air held that heavy silence only found in places where grief has stayed too long. Daniel knelt near the altar, not to be seen, but to be heard by someone higher. If he was still listening, his hands trembled as he whispered, "I don't need a miracle. Just enough strength for tomorrow. Just one more good day for her." His voice cracked on her. His daughter, Lily, was all he had, and every prayer he offered was for her smile, her warmth, her beating heart. The pews behind him were empty. Or so he thought, high above, half hidden in the shadows of the old balcony. A woman watched through the sliver of an open window. Her heels had clicked against marble earlier, but now she stood still, arms folded, lips pressed together, as if holding back something ancient. She didn't believe in prayers, not anymore, but his voice had frozen her in place. Down below, Daniel pressed his forehead to the floor. "I know I'm nothing, Lord, but I love her like everything." The candle flickered, then stilled. A breeze whispered through the broken stained glass. Daniel rose slowly, spine weary from years that hadn't been kind. Outside, the city didn't care, but tonight, one soul did dot in the balcony. The woman turned to leave, but not before glancing, one last time, at the man who prayed like no one was listening. And she wouldn't forget that. Voice. Not ever. A silent figure lingers in the shadows of the chapel balcony. Morning. Light seeped through a thin curtain in the cramped apartment. Paint peeled from the walls like tired skin, and the small stove hissed like it was holding in tears. Daniel scraped the last of the peanut butter into a piece of folded bread. No jelly, no sides, just that. He placed it in a worn lunchbox, the clasp half broken but still doing its job. Across the room, Lily brushed her hair, tongue peeking out in concentration. She wore the same shoes she'd outgrown months ago, toes curled slightly where the leather pinched. "Ready, Daddy." She beamed. Daniel smiled, trying to hide the ache in his gut. Always. They walked to school together. He held her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. At the gate, she hugged him twice. "You'll eat lunch too, right?" He hesitated. Of course, she narrowed her eyes, skeptical. "Promise." Daniel nodded, then turned before she could ask again. He walked 5 blocks to the construction site where he wasn't hired. Just hopeful. Every day he checked. Every day, the same shake of the head. So he sat behind the building, alone, and watched other men eat. He unwrapped a paper towel from his coat pocket, crumbs only. His stomach growled, but he pressed a palm over it. "I'll eat tomorrow," he muttered, lying to no one. Later that night, as they sat on the floor eating rice and canned beans, Lily glanced at his empty plate. "Why don't you ever eat with me, Daddy?" Daniel froze. The question didn't come with anger, just innocence. He forced a laugh, i.e., when you smile, and you smile every day. She smiled then, like it was enough. But Daniel's eyes stayed wet long after she'd fallen asleep. "Why don't you ever eat with me, Daddy?" A sleek black car idled across the street from the chapel. Its windows were tinted like secrets, shielding its passenger from the night, yet letting in just enough of the world to watch it quietly fall apart. Inside, Evelyn Cole sat still as a statue. Her fingers toyed with the edge of her silk scarf, though her eyes were locked on the chapel's entrance. She hadn't planned to stop, but something about the faint glow of candles behind broken stained glass had pulled her gaze, and then his voice had reached her. The driver, Leonard, adjusted the mirror. "Ma'am." She raised a hand, not in irritation, but in reverence. A prayer was happening, not hers. The voice came through the cracked window again. "I know I'm nobody, but please don't let her carry the weight I couldn't lift." Evelyn blinked. Something in her chest stirred, a rusted hinge cracking open after years of being shut. That voice, gravel, and gentleness all at once wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was honest, and it sounded familiar. As the man stepped out of the chapel, his coat thin against the wind, Evelyn leaned forward. He didn't notice the car. He didn't notice anything. He just walked, shoulders hunched, head down, like someone who had nothing left to protect but one small hope. Leonard asked, "Should I follow him?" She didn't answer immediately. She stared down at her reflection in the car window. perfectly composed, perfectly alone. Then, softly, she whispered, "Find out who he is." The car merged into the streetlights, silence, and disappeared into the night. Inside the chapel, the last candle sputtered out, but something had already been lit. She whispers to her driver, "Find out who he is." The downtown building shimmered with glass and gold, a corporate tower scraping the morning sky. Daniel stood at the entrance, adjusting the borrowed dress shirt that hung loose on his frame. It was the cleanest thing he owned. His shoes were scuffed, but his heart beat steady. He rehearsed the lines in his head, hard-working, on time. "I clean like my life depends on it," because it did. Inside, the marble floor stretched like a frozen river. Receptionists barely looked up. The scent of polished wood and power hung in the air. Daniel stepped forward, holding the crumpled slip of paper. "Janitorial interview. 10 o'clock, he said softly. The receptionist looked him over. Once, that was enough. She tapped on her screen, then shook her head. "There's no interview scheduled." "But I got a call. A woman told me." He paused, realizing he had no name. "Sir, there's no listing. You'll have to leave." He stood there awkwardly, like a man who'd wandered into someone else's story. A guard approached. "You can't loiter here." "I'm not loitering." "I came for the guard," cut him off. "You came in through the front." Daniel looked confused. "Is there another way?" A pause then, quieter, almost sympathetic. The guard said, "You shouldn't have come in through the front." Daniel stepped back, holding onto his pride like it might fall from his hands. Outside, he sat on the steps, staring at his reflection in the glass dot inside. Men in suits walked past. No one noticed the man who'd shown up early, hopeful, and had the door silently closed on him in the reflection behind him. The black car from the chapel passed again. Its passenger didn't look away this time. A security guard murmurs, "You shouldn't have come in through the front." The laundromat buzzed with machines and fluorescent lights that never fully lit the corners. Plastic chairs lined the wall like tired old men. Daniel sat cross-legged on the cracked tile floor, his back resting against a rattling dryer. Lily curled beside him, her head in his lap, thumb tucked under her chin the way she always did when she was fighting sleep. A half-full laundry basket rested near them, mostly her clothes, always her clothes. Daniel looked down and brushed her hair back gently. "You want to hear your song?" Her eyes fluttered. She nodded. He took a breath and sang softly. "When the sun hides low and your hands feel small, I'll hold the world back till you stand tall." His voice wasn't perfect, but it was soft, warm, full. It wrapped around the humming machines and turned that dull room into something sacred. A woman folding towels to machines overpaused. So did a man pouring detergent. The sound didn't demand attention. It earned it, even if the stars fall and the lights go dim. You'll always have a home right here. With him, Lily smiled in her sleep. Daniel stopped singing but didn't move. The song lingered. Someone in the back, a teen in a hoodie, quietly lifted his phone. No flash, just instinct. He hit record. Across the room, the woman who'd paused earlier whispered to no one, "That's a real daddy." Daniel leaned back, staring at the ceiling. No applause, no tips, no promises, just one safe breath for the girl who had his heart. And somewhere beyond those humming machines, a melody made its way to the internet and into someone's waiting. Hands a stranger records the moment and uploads it. The soft glow of a MacBook lit Evelyn's face in the dark library of her penthouse. Outside, the skyline blinked like a circuit board of cold stars. Inside, silence reigned until a soft melody slipped from the speakers. She hadn't meant to click the video. It was a trending link sent by a junior assistant. Single dad sings to daughter in laundromat. Grab tissues. Evelyn sipped her wine, unimpressed. Then, the voice. Her hand froze midair. The grainy clip played. A man in worn clothes, sitting on the floor, singing with every ounce of his soul. The little girl curled in his lap looked safe, safer than most children in mansions. But it wasn't the girl that made. Evelyn leaned closer. It was the voice, raw, familiar. She pressed pause, then rewind, then play again. The same cadence, the same pauses between lines, the same tone she remembered from years ago. From a man who used to sing to her mother when the world felt like it was ending. Her father Evelyn stood up. Her wine glass wobbled and tipped, red staining the ivory rug. She didn't notice. She pressed her fingers to her lips, eyes misting. It can't be him. She closed the laptop fast, like the sound itself had hurt her. But the damage was done. Memories long buried began to unearth themselves. Prayer. Abandonment. A funeral without forgiveness. She stared out over the city. Beneath her calm face, something was cracking. Not just because she'd recognized the voice, but because it reminded her of a man she both loved and never forgave. She closes her laptop, visibly shaken. I know that voice. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and left without a return address. Daniel found it tucked into the crack of his apartment door after picking Lily up from school. Inside, an invitation. Dinner, 7 p.m., Cole Estate. Formal attire requested. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Then he reread the last line, handwritten in soft black ink. I heard your prayer. I'd like to speak with you. He almost tore it in half. But Lily was already reading over his shoulder. Are we going to a castle? She asked, wide-eyed. Daniel chuckled nervously. Something like that. The hours passed slow. His best shirt had one missing button, so he sewed one on from an old pair of pants. His shoes he cleaned with an old toothbrush. Lily laid his collar flat with small, serious hands. You look like a movie star. Daddy, she whispered. He smiled, then looked away. He wasn't used to mirrors. They always reminded him of the things he couldn't fix at the estate gates. He hesitated. A butler opened the door with a quiet nod. The walls inside rose tall, decorated in silver and silence. No family photos, no warmth in the dining hall. Evelyn stood like a portrait come to life, graceful, unreadable, backlit by a chandelier that cost more than Daniel's life. He stepped in, shoulders tight. Thank you for coming, she said, motioning to the chair across from her. Daniel didn't sit. I don't belong here, he muttered. You prayed, she replied. Someone listened. He glanced at the cutlery lined like weapons beside his plate. Unsure how to begin, he almost turned to leave, until Lily's voice echoed in his head. You look like a movie star. Daddy, he sat. Carefully, he almost doesn't show, but his daughter insists. He goes, the silverware sparkled. Under the chandelier, like it had somewhere better too. Daniel stared at the plate in front. Of him, a garden of food arranged like artwork. Tiny flowers, dots of sauce, meat sliced thinner than dignity. He reached for the wrong fork. Evelyn said nothing, but her eyes noticed. He tried to correct himself, fumbling quietly, hands shaking just enough to betray how hard he was trying not to look small. A butler poured wine. Daniel put a hand over his glass. Just water, please. He sipped too quickly and choked. A cough escaped his throat before he could bury it. His face flushed. He wiped with a napkin, unsure if he'd used the wrong one. Evelyn didn't laugh, didn't offer comfort either. She watched, studied, as if trying to match the face in front of her with the voice she couldn't stop hearing in her head. I know this is strange, she said gently, slicing her food with slow grace. He nodded. Rich people inviting poor men to dinner. Yeah, it's strange. You think I'm mocking you. I think people don't hand out kindness without a price tag. A pause. Then, evenly. Why did you pray that night? Daniel looked up sharply. The question cut deeper than the silver. He held her gaze. Unsure how much to give away, because I didn't know if I could keep giving her hope when I had none left. Evelyn's expression faltered, just for a breath, then returned to polished stillness. Daniel looked down again, fork trembling. I don't belong here, he repeated, but he didn't leave, and she didn't ask him to. Why did you pray that night? She finally asks. The room grew quiet. Not the expensive kind of quiet, but the fragile kind. The kind that comes before someone opens an old wound, its tip catching the candlelight. My father used to pray like that, she said. Daniel glanced up, uncertain, in secret. At night, after arguments, after missed birthdays, her voice wavered, not like someone weak, but like someone who hadn't spoken the truth out loud in years. I'd hear him behind my bedroom wall, whispering, begging, always for forgiveness, but never to my face. She leaned back, eyes distant now. He built this empire, but couldn't build a bridge between us. He gave speeches on stages, but never said sorry in a room where I could hear it. Daniel watched her, not judging, just listening. The way a father does when his child finally speaks without fear. He died 2 years ago, she continued. No final talk. No handwritten letter. Just silence, in a casket lined in silk. She looked down at her plate. No longer hungry. I never forgave him. A beat, but when I heard your voice in that chapel, it was like hearing him again. Only this time, the words weren't for a legacy. They were for love. Daniel swallowed hard. I'm not him. No, she said softly. You're the man he should have been. They sat there, a broken daughter and a breaking father, with a table between them too wide for pride. The wind rustled the hedges like someone passing through unseen dot inside. Two people realized they'd both grown up around silence and were finally learning to speak. He died never knowing I forgave him. The dining room sat in a soft afterglow, candles melting into silence. Evelyn folded her hands on the table. I have a proposition, she said. Daniel looked up, guarded. You're capable. You're careful. You love fiercely. I want someone like that on my staff. He raised an eyebrow. Staff? She nodded. I run multiple properties, foundations, schools. I need someone to manage the facilities at a new center I'm building. It's in Vermont. Quiet, clean, paid housing, full benefits. He blinked, stunned. He started, but stopped himself. She pushed a business card across the table. It was heavy, embossed in gold. It's yours if you want it. He held the card, feeling its weight like a stone in his palm. His eyes flickered to the window behind her. The city glimmered like something always just out of reach. What's the catch? He asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. You'd need to move immediately. His face fell. Lily. School. Her routine, her world. He leaned back, thinking aloud. She's just starting to feel settled. You'd be providing her a future, Evelyn said. Daniel's voice dropped. But what if the price is her present? Silence. Upstairs in the small apartment across town, Lily was coloring at the kitchen table. She glanced at the door where Daniel had left hours ago. And then, at her little backpack hanging on the hook, she stood. Walked to the closet and quietly started placing her things inside. Crayons, a stuffed giraffe, socks. No one told her anything. But children know when winds are shifting. And she was already preparing for the storm. His daughter overhears and quietly starts packing her things. The Cole estate slept under moonlight, its grand halls hushed but restless. Daniel wandered alone, lost in thought. Holding the business card Evelyn had given him, now creased from the press of his fingers, he passed portraits of unfamiliar men, oil paint giants, staring down at him, like they knew he didn't belong. He turned a corner and found it. A room bathed in pale blue, curtains open to the stars. The grand piano sat in the center like it had waited for someone to remember it. Daniel stepped in, drawn by instinct more than intention. His fingers hovered over the keys. He hadn't played since Lily was born, not since the music school called to say his scholarship was canceled. Just weeks after her mother left, he sat, pressed a single key, then another. A chord bloomed softly into the stillness. Then, a melody. Unpolished, raw, but full of ache and memory. He played the lullaby, the same one he sang at the laundromat, but slower now, as if telling the piano a secret it had been made to keep. Behind him, a figure appeared at the doorway. Evelyn. She didn't move, didn't speak, just listened, tears spilling down her cheeks silently. She hadn't heard that melody in years. Her father used to play it when her mother was sick. Then again, after she died, the same chords, the same pauses, the same love buried in sound. Daniel reached the final note and let it hang in the air. He didn't turn around. He didn't need applause. Just a quiet space where his pain could breathe. Evelyn stayed in the shadows, crying not for the music but for what it used to mean. And what it meant now. She listens from the doorway, crying softly. The clinic smelled of lemon cleaner and waiting. Daniel sat in the corner, hunched over forms he couldn't afford to sign. Lily kicked her feet gently, humming the lullaby under her breath. The receptionist called his name. He stood quickly, bracing himself. Mr. Daniels, she said with a polite smile. Your daughter's surgery. It's been covered. He blinked. I think there's a mistake. No, sir. An anonymous donor paid the full amount. In advance. Daniel froze. Don't understand. The receptionist handed him a note. No name. Just a typed sentence. No child should suffer for what a parent cannot control. His knees nearly buckled. He looked at Lily, cheeks rosy, eyes bright, and swallowed a flood of disbelief. Walking home, he carried her on his back. She laughed as the wind danced through her hair. "Did someone help us?" she asked. Daniel nodded. Someone kind. He didn't mention the card still in his pocket, or the music room, or Evelyn's eyes that had once held silence, but now shimmered with something else. That night, while Lily slept, he returned to the chapel, same spot, same prayer, but this time, he wept openly. "Thank you," he whispered, not begging, just grateful. The moon poured light through the broken glass above. His shoulders shook, not from shame, but from release. And though the chapel was empty again, he felt like someone was still listening. Perhaps heaven had never needed to be loud, just honest, outside. Evelyn sat in the black car. She didn't approach, she just watched. And when he finally stood, she whispered, "He still prays like he's the only one who can save her." But she was saving him, quietly, in ways he might never know. He prays again, this time with tears. The envelope arrived in the mailbox without fanfare. No logo, no return address. Just Daniel, written in careful feminine script. He opened it slowly, hands rough against the softness of the paper. Inside, a single letter. Folded once, "I never knew what to do with regret until I met you. I watched you pray in that chapel. I watched you sing in that laundromat. I watched you play my father's song on a piano no one had touched since he died. You are not him, and yet, somehow, you're healing the part of me he broke. I paid for your daughter's surgery not because I felt pity, but because I saw in your eyes what he never had the courage to show. Me you love without shame. You fight without asking for applause. You reminded me that forgiveness doesn't always need words, just presence." Pause in the letter. "Then, if you want the job, it's still yours. But more than that, if you ever want someone to hear your prayers and not just listen from the shadows, I'm here." Evelyn Daniel folded the letter slowly, as if closing something sacred. He stood in the kitchen, eyes burning. Outside, Lily laughed, chasing soap bubbles through sunlight. He watched her safe, healthy, free. Then he dropped to his knees. Not out of sorrow, but because the weight had finally lifted. Not all of it, but enough. He clutched the letter to his chest like it was proof that grace could find even the forgotten. He drops to his knees in disbelief. Rain tapped gently on the stained glass of a small chapel tucked away behind Evelyn's estate. The air smelled of damp stone and lavender. Candles flickered, not for prayer, but for memory. Daniel stood at the back, unsure if he was meant to be there. Evelyn sat in the front pew alone, dressed in black silk, her hair pulled back, spine straight, not with pride, but with something heavier. "Choice," she turned slightly as he entered. "You came," she said softly. "I didn't know if I should. I wasn't sure either," she replied, eyes ahead. "But I didn't want to say goodbye to him alone." Daniel walked slowly down the aisle and sat beside her. The silence between them was thick with things neither had said. A framed photo rested on the altar. Her father, young, handsome, distant. "He prayed in this room too," she whispered. "But he never let anyone in." Daniel studied the photo, then looked at her. He didn't know how. He said, Evelyn's voice cracked, "And I didn't know how to reach him." Daniel looked down at his calloused hands. "You did," he said gently. "You forgave him. That's more than most daughters ever get to give." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I used to dream he'd come back different," she whispered, "that he'd be someone like you." Daniel turned to her, eyes filled with quiet truth. "I'm just a man who stayed," she nodded, trembling, "and that's all I ever needed." He reached over, and without words, took her hand not as a lover, not as a replacement, but as a promise, for her and for every version of her that had waited by a door that never opened. "He prayed like you, but he never stayed." "You did?" The hall was filled with rows of folding chairs, freshly waxed floors, and the quiet hum of anticipation. Children whispered to one another. Parents checked their phones, and staff straightened paper programs at every seat. At the front stood a new sign, draped in cloth Evelyn took the stage, simple, in black and white. No jewelry, no pretense, just her voice, clear, steady. Today we open something that means more to me than any tower, fund, or title ever has. She gestured to the cloth. This scholarship is not in honor of wealth, or bloodline, or merit. It is in honor of something rarer. She pulled the cloth down. The Daniels Fund for Fathers Who Stay gasp rippled through the room. Daniel sat in the second row, Lily on his lap. He hadn't known she would use his name. Not publicly, Evelyn continued, eyes locking with his. It is for the men who show up when they have nothing, who sing lullabies in London, who pray when no one's watching, who stay when life gives them every reason to leave. A standing ovation rose slowly, unsure at first, then unstoppable. Daniel looked down at Lily, who clapped with both hands and both cheeks glowing. That's your name? He shook his head, smiling through tears. It's ours. Cameras flashed. Applause swelled. But Daniel only saw one thing. Evelyn, finally smiling. Finally at peace. For her father. For herself. For all the quiet men who'd been told. Their stories didn't matter. And now, they did. For every father who gave even when he had nothing. The garden behind the chapel was simple. Stone benches, a wooden arch of tangled vines, and roses that bloomed in quiet rebellion. Against the city's noise, it was dusk. Golden light spilled through the trees like grace. Daniel knelt in the grass, knees against the earth. Lily sat beside him, copying his posture, hands folded, eyes closed. One eye peeking open to watch him. Across from them stood Evelyn, not as a benefactor, not as a billionaire, but as a daughter who had healed, a woman who had learned to kneel beside someone else's pain. Daniel whispered softly, "Thank you," for breath, for second chances. For her, he squeezed Lily's hand, and for the people who stay, even when they don't have to. Lily whispered back, "Amen." Evelyn didn't pray aloud, but she closed her eyes, and for the first time, she wasn't listening from the shadows. She was part of the prayer. Wind moved through the branches. One petal drifted onto Daniel's shoulder. He didn't brush it off. He let it rest there, like a blessing he hadn't expected, but deeply needed. Lily stood, tugged his arm. "Come on, Daddy, it's getting dark." He rose slowly, not with the weight of burden, but with the lightness of peace. Evelyn offered a hand to both of them. They walked together toward the house. No titles, no walls, no debts, just three people who once lived in silence, now walking in the same direction. The chapel bells rang faintly behind them, soft, slow, like a lullaby returning home. And in the fading light, Daniel looked back once, then whispered without turning, "Some prayers take longer to reach heaven. But they do. Some prayers take longer to reach heaven. But they do."